On March 29, 1895, readers of the San Jose Daily News opened the paper to an intriguing article. Strange story: a woman who thinks she'll die when her house is built. There were rumors, of course, about the Winchester house. Whispers of a haunted labyrinth, nightly seances, and an impossibly rich, impossibly mad woman traversing its ornate halls. The anonymous writer for the Daily News noted the home's astounding number of turrets, the towering roofs, and the overall fantastical nature of its design. The writer claimed to know the reason behind the ever-expanding house. 10 years ago, the handsome residence was apparently ready for occupancy, but improvements and additions are constantly being made. For the reason, it is said, that the owner of the house believes that when it is entirely completed, she will die. Spooky stories really are the bread and butter of this show, so if you enjoy learning about them, make sure that you're subscribed. When I first learned about the Winchester Mystery House, I was fascinated, and I can totally see how a building of this magnitude would inspire such crazy stories. But what I found especially compelling is the backstory of its owner and designer, Sarah Winchester. Far from being a simple ghost story, what I instead found was a complex tale of westward expansion, Gilded Age industrialism, and of course, one woman's vision for what would become one of America's most famous haunted houses. I'm Nicole Miras, and this is Fireside Fables. In the mid-1880s, a wealthy widow named Sarah Winchester moved to the Santa Clara Valley in Northern California. I found conflicting records about when she actually moved, but we're looking at sometime between 1884 and 1886. And she was a young widow. She would have been in her mid-40s. She bought an 8-bedroom farmhouse in San Jose, which today, that city is definitely emblematic of California's urban sprawl. Nearly 2 million people now reside in the San Jose metro area. But in the 1880s, California was still mostly rural with a Wild West spirit. Residents were unaccustomed to seeing the big, sprawling homes that the wealthy would occupy in cities like New York or Boston or Philadelphia. So when Sarah Winchester began expanding the property, seemingly to no end, people noticed. Who lived in that gargantuan house? It seemed to be only Mrs. Winchester and her niece, and who knew what they got up to? As the years went on and the house grew larger and larger, people began to notice how reclusive Sarah Winchester was. And of course, there was the question of how she got her money. Because as it turned out, Sarah Winchester was the widow of William Winchester. They married in 1862 when Sarah was 23 and William was 25. He came from a wealthy New England family who had built their fortune in the garment industry. But with the backdrop of the Civil War, William saw the potential in a new kind of rifle, one that could fire multiple rounds without having to be reloaded. He raced to develop what would become the Winchester repeating rifle, hoping he could sell it to the U.S. Army during the war. Now, it was too quick of a turnaround for this rifle to make a real dent in the way that the war was prosecuted. But after the states reunified, the country reshifted its focus to westward expansion. In this endeavor, the Winchester repeating rifle was an essential weapon, and it soon became known as the gun that won the West, making the Winchesters unbelievably wealthy in the process. But by the end of the 19th century, Americans were becoming more aware of the human toll of westward expansion, particularly the decimation of indigenous communities. Suddenly, Sarah Winchester's money seemed tainted, and Lord knows she had a lot of it. Her shares in the arms company gave her an income of $1,500 per day. To give you an idea, $1,500 in 1890 is about $53,000 today. So in today's dollars, she was making an income of about $20 million per year. But Sarah also faced a great deal of loss before moving to California. Her only child, a daughter, died shortly after she was born. 14 years later, between 1880 and 1881, Sarah lost her mother, her father-in-law, and her husband. It was from these events that the core legend of the Winchester house was born. The rumor was that Sarah believed her family was cursed, and that before moving west, she visited a famous psychic in Boston named Adam Coons. He informed her that she was being haunted by all of the victims of the Winchester repeating rifle, and that the only way to prevent her own death was to start building a house that could never be finished. If she stopped working on the house, she would die. That legend, as we can see from the article in the San Jose Daily News, clung to Sarah Winchester. Soon the story evolved to include nightly seances, stairs and halls that led to nowhere, doors that opened to the outside air, and of course, a labyrinth, a never-ending trap from which the mad Sarah Winchester could never escape. When she died in 1922 at the age of 83, the house remained unfinished. So, that's the story. But who was the real Sarah Winchester? It is true that Sarah Winchester moved to California shortly after the loss of many family members. But that isn't the entire story. There's no evidence to substantiate the narrative that she had visited a psychic or that she believed she was cursed. She was certainly grieving, but there was another reason that she decided to move. By her mid-40s, Sarah Winchester had developed rheumatoid arthritis. Previously, she lived in New Haven, Connecticut, and her physician recommended moving to a warmer, drier climate for her health. And at this time, it was trendy for patients with a variety of ailments to move to California, especially those recovering from tuberculosis, which was actually what killed her husband, William. California had perfect dry weather and clean air, and she had visited San Francisco previously with William, and she loved it. Also, she didn't move alone. There was another loss. In 1884, her eldest sister passed away. So Sarah decided to move to California with two of her other sisters and their families. Her sister Nettie was married to Homer Sprague, who was to be the president of Mills College. One of her other sisters, Isabel Merriman, also moved her family in with Sarah. The idea was to expand the 8-bedroom farmhouse, which sat on over 40 acres of land, so that they could all live together. But this plan was short-lived. Sprague's tenure at Mills didn't last long, and he soon found another post in North Dakota. Then Isabel and her family decided to move to San Francisco, with the exception of Isabel's daughter, Marion, who decided to live with her Aunt Sarah. And that's how the home came to be occupied by two women rather than a large extended family. Nevertheless, Sarah Winchester took great interest in building her home. It was her passion, and while she initially worked with architects, she soon dismissed them and took over the design process herself. She had more than enough money to bring her vision to life. She didn't have a unified plan for the house and preferred to go room by room. If she didn't like something, she started over. It was rare in this time to see a woman not only taking the lead on a project like this, but occupying the role that an architect would traditionally play. Historian Mary Jo Ignofo wrote a wonderful biography of Sarah Winchester, in which she reveals a woman who was far from mad, but quite methodical and deeply passionate about her project. Sarah Winchester wasn't crazy, she was just an introvert who really enjoyed building her house. The crazy lady trope brings in a few elements here. First, there's the obvious sexism. She was a Victorian woman who chose to live unconventionally. Second, there's the class dynamics. Keep in mind, the 1890s saw the Panic of 1893, a major economic depression that would only be outdone by the Great Depression of the 1930s. Sarah Winchester was not only a member of the economic elite, but she also made her money through weapons manufacturing, which the public regarded as increasingly dubious. Third, the Winchester house was built in California, which had a very different culture from the Northeast. Seeing a palatial home like this would not have been shocking to the residents of New York or Connecticut, but it stuck out like a sore thumb in San Jose. Okay, but what about some of the weird architectural elements, like the door that leads to nowhere? Well, believe it or not, the Winchester house was once larger than where it currently stands today at 24,000 square feet. In 1906, the San Francisco Bay Area suffered a major earthquake. Californians are always waiting for the big one. Well, this was the big one, with an estimated moment magnitude of 7.9. Over 3,000 people died, and the city of San Francisco was nearly destroyed. San Jose also faced extensive damage, including the Winchester House. After the debris was cleared, the parts of the house that were damaged beyond repair were never rebuilt, which is why you'll find oddities like the door that leads to nowhere. And that brings me to the final point about the Winchester curse. After the earthquake in 1906, construction on the house largely halted, but Sarah Winchester lived until 1922. She also owned several properties in Atherton, California, where she spent most of her remaining years. After she died, the home was too big, out of style, and expensive to maintain for a buyer. Instead, it was leased by a man named John H. Brown, who decided to turn it into a tourist attraction. Brown was a Canadian man who had invented an early roller coaster, one that threw a rider from her seat in 1910, resulting in her death. After the accident, Brown relocated his family to California. But he always remembered the Mystery House at the amusement park on Lake Erie, and how it had always been extremely popular with the park's guests. He capitalized on the rumors about Sarah Winchester and renamed the home the Winchester Mystery House, successfully attracting thousands of visitors. This is in spite of efforts by Sarah's family and former employees, who publicly disputed the madwoman characterization. Sarah Winchester was a deeply misunderstood woman, but she was also a creative force who fueled her energy into building an iconic landmark. To this day, her home is a major tourist attraction in San Jose. And while it does rely on its spooky aura to get people in the door, it does mean that new generations will get to experience her artistry in person. Thank you so much for watching. If you love learning about folklore, ghost stories, haunted houses, and more, please make sure that you are subscribed. And if you have an idea for a future episode, let me know in the comments. Be well, and I'll see you next time.